our vision in the moment. As I was sitting, contemplating my own future, right? Is this about future? This is about where we are and why we are, right? What is it that I do when I come on live that I don't do when I visit with people? It's like one-on-one or in person. These are the visions of strength from a higher level understanding for me, right? How many people want to know if you want to go to that vision of love for your fellow country members, right? Is this about the nation at large? It can be. This is where I do my work most often. I arrive to these conclusions, right? Based on the ideas of what? My own soul. Many will say I don't need to go to Brenda's soul to understand the vision of love. However, if I bring in visions of those souls who were there at the founding of our country, do we want to hear from those visions of what they see going on? Right? No. What we're going to do is talk about the addressing of the nation by a president, right? That's not what was heard from me as my soul. It was talking about the compassion we have, right, for everybody. Or do I honor the love of our country was what I heard. Most who identify as a group storming the Capitol, right? The foundational fathers or the foundational principles of our land are being called into question by those who claim they love our country. Oh, 'tis of thee, right? Sweet land of liberty. We have values that people are projecting onto these visions, correct? Whose vision do you think we would be calling into question if we were to have a session about what my own soul says versus that of those of the nation? Do you want to hear the compassionate words for those who are storming the Capitol? Right? It's not compassion as much as it is understanding. And that's why we need to go there. Now, in essence, if there is indeed destructive natures on that Capitol floor, how much damage did they do in their minds when they now have bombs lobbed at them? Those packages of destruction were indeed, basically they were indeed validated as being explosive and destructive. That means the terrorists are on their vision. That's them pushing their buttons. You throw a bomb into a national capital, you're now deemed a domestic terrorist. This vision was played out many years ago in Oklahoma City. Do you want to go to that level of understanding about the kinds of people we're starting to incite to rise up in this country? In the name of what? What value system are they holding that allows them to go to that nature of, I need to plant a bomb that kills people, right? In the name of love. Their version of love is not the same that most of us hold in our hearts. Their version of destruction is where most people tend to operate from in their minds, right? Not even close. We know the majority of the people in this country are not in that vision of destruction. However, we have to be mindful. This is where mindfulness comes in about the loose cannons that are coming through. That's how they're going to be labeled, right? I've got people who look to me for direction. That's the responsibility of a leader, to know, when do I stand down, Mr. President? That's what the vision of love would have given him. They would have said, stand down, instead of more of the same, right? This is not about anti-Trump. This is about it's like pro-form. The forms of our minds create these visions of destruction. That's one level of understanding. Others will say that's the devil's work. How many people identify and are happy about the visions that they see playing out on the Capitol? And where do those visions land you in your idea of love? If you can't take it, don't dish it, honey. That's what I get told, right? So there are going to be people who will say, your vision of love is about antagonizing those people who need to be held up to a higher level of understanding. When you get to the place where I do, it's in understanding that mindset. Those are the police officers that may or may not what? Throw the tear gas on the other members of society that are protesting for their visions of love. You see, we understand the nature of protest, right? And that higher level of vision, there are always higher levels of understanding about what can and cannot occur in the vision of love. So others will say that is a vision of love of country. Others will say that is sadistic in its interpretation of love. I'm so conditioned in my mindset of war, I can't even see another way to go about getting my views placed in a place where they can flourish. So instead of me going about it in a way that invites others to understand, I'm going to throw bombs at people to get my message across, which actually does the duty that it's like the damage. So do you want to go to a higher level of understanding of what those visions of bombs do? We plant them to get attention. The destructive nature of my mind says I am now in that vision of chaos, right? But in essence, to understand that vision, most people don't want to understand where they're coming from. I'm so disgruntled in my vision of Trump, who's telling me to plant bombs, right? This is not his vision. However, did I discourage the people enough? I am responsible as a leader of this country to hold myself up, admit defeat, and get on with the next order of business. That's a true leader. The leadership qualities that we hold high in our hearts are not what we are seeing displayed on the screen in this moment. That is obvious. How do we reconcile the visions of those souls who are carrying out those acts of violence for a man's agenda that is basically one of, I can't admit defeat. I can't admit defeat. Okay? And in that vision, his soul is very strong in that I need to be strong for my children. Does he care about everyone's children? Or is it just his own? That's not the message that his soul would say. He's obviously very concerned about the welfare of all. On a higher level of understanding, he's in that mindset of I know what's best for this country. But the vision of, justice says absolutely not. You've had your say in court. It's time to move on. Those are the justices of past that would come through. We told you the vision of destruction would be planted on our doorstep. When we align with those of exclusion, because that's the nature of his vision, I'm going to try to carry out it's like a prism effect. Most people don't see themselves in those visions. I created that vision of destruction with the perpetrators of injustice. What vision do we hold them to? Will they all be brought to justice? Right? How many people want to see them continue the damage and destruction to the nation's capital? Okay, in essence, they're going to validate that vision, assuming it's just as high as any other vision of destruction that they've seen, placed on someone else's vision in the news, right? Oh, it's okay for us to protest. This is different. This is the difference in frequencies, vibrations, intentions, and the laws of the land are on the side of those of destruction for the most part. Most of the people will not be convicted of any crime. How many knew about the bombs that were being placed in the vicinity in which they operated their protest? Okay. How many realize I could have been a victim of someone else's extremism to the point that I was now labeled a participant in someone else's destruction of lives and livelihoods? So for them, the vision of I'm going to kill potentially people is more important to them than the vision of the lives and the ripple effects that those visions have, not only on this nation's capital, but around the world. We're the bullies of the world in many ways. That's a lot of the world will look at us in that vision and say, look at what they're doing. Maybe they're going to open their eyes to the nature of who they really are. It's just now being aimed at themselves versus out towards others. And this is not to diminish the beauty of the country in the way in which we do help others. But that's the nature of it, right? I want to bully the nation's leaders into what? What future is there in being a terrorist? I go down as what? Notary? I'm notarized. It's not notary. Notorious? You want to be a notorious person? You want to be, idealized as what? The freedom fighters? That's a vision that many don't actually understand. What a future freedom fighter would say is don't go down the path of terrorism. You will gain no freedom in that vision, by the way. And the majority of the people know that. They honor that vision, thinking that's their way to freedom. It's not. Freedom is a higher frequency. You can't reach it when you're in the destruction of lives. Now, those in the method of religion will disagree. They will often say, I can fight for the freedom of my blessed, the sins of the devil. And all people will come up with all kinds of destructive visions to try to justify their visions of destruction. All is well, right? In this world, we hold ourselves to a higher vision, okay? Most actually, if you think about the nature of history, those who are of destruction sometimes come through as honored, okay? Because in essence, maybe in hindsight, they could see the bigger picture. The majority of them get dishonored. The majority of the people in the vision of destruction don't come about in a frequency of love from others. That's their vision. How many people in that vision of destruction that we see going on today are going to be honored for their vision? That's a shadow soul. That's when you need to go in and say, do I actually think that's a great way to be? Would I want my children doing that same thing? What about the innocent victims of someone else's radical visions? Do we wish harm on others? Okay? That's where those souls are. If you're at the point where you're like, I'm going in and I'm going to potentially hold people hostage, at what point does it become apparent that these people have gone on a different level of understanding? We have people who we know who are incapable of controlling their emotions. They have lost the ability to see beyond the screen. They do not honor the vision of, my life is not my president. They have so identified with one man and his agenda that they have lost sight of their own vision of beauty for who they are. That's their souls, in essence. So can they imagine the vision as a child growing up saying, I want to identify with one man's vision of hatred for a lot of people and love of the country, right? Love of certain people in the country. Let's be clear about that. There is no way this man is of love for all. In his highest vision, he would be. Okay, because he holds the country as a unit. But in essence, he treats various groups as less than. And in that moment, most people will start to understand the visions that they themselves hold as, I am above the law. If you get to that point where you are above the law, you have crossed the line, correct? Not always. We allow for protest, but once we cross the line into violence that affects other people especially, then that's a different level of understanding. The souls themselves would say, oh my God, where was I when I did that vision? How many people know? We have plenty of people who could come through who were in their mindsets of destruction and then did that vision questing and said, I wish I wasn't on that screen. I wish I wasn't the one looking like that on the screen. Right? I wish I wasn't that person on the news holding those, terrorist actions in my mindset. So how do we come to a place of healing for our own souls, realizing we're all taking part in that vision, in essence, by creating the visions of those who are so, carefree in their minds of love? What is going on in their lives where they feel like they have to identify with one man who is not their soul, their savior, or any other vision? This is my president, right? Not anymore. The man is one man given the title for a certain level of time. He's never meant to be the one. How many identify with the presidents of past and would say, I would die for them? Right? I mean, that's the nature of many, especially if they are, serving in the military. But this is a different vision. These people aren't in the vision of I am of commanding, right? I'm not in the military necessarily, but I'm willing to go to war. That's that vision of destruction, of civil war in essence, or in their mindsets, they think it's of revolution, it's of reaction. They're the reactionaries of the world. They are definitely not in the vision of a true revolution. You cannot get to that vision of higher level understanding of revolution if you're always just reacting to something, right? And this doesn't mean that people didn't plan out something, but they're always in that vision of, I want to be in a revolution. They don't even know what their next, paycheck is going to be coming from, right? Are these the disenfranchised people? We might need to address that, right? There's so many people who probably have lost their jobs, maybe, or their incomes. And yet, the vision of who they are holding responsible has never been called in to answer for, right? Like, who's responsible for each person's vision of their life? So does Trump hold their hands When he comes out of office, is he going to be holding their hands and taking them under his wing? No, he is not. Right? How many does he employ? Right? How many does he treat with respect? Will he put these people to work? He's got plenty of office space, right? It's not a degrading of the soul, but it's an honest assessment of people having to go, would this person actually take care of me? Because that's what these people are looking for. I need someone to take care of me. Right? I'm being held in my heart. Because people are starting to understand, why are we looking to someone else as our savior, right? So in essence, a lot of people of religion, they would probably actually get it and go, yeah, I just need to be praying more, or, looking up into, into those higher levels of vision. But others, and this would be in their minds, they'd be like, oh, these people need to go find Jesus, right? And how many of them are in that vision and have completely left it behind? And so they don't understand the nature of what it means. Now, the caretakers of our hearts are going to understand. This is just a very, very short session. But in essence, this could have been one of those issues where the founding fathers of past could come through and strengthen the nobility. Because that's what that vision holds himself to. He's more in the mindset of I'm a king, or, instead of I am a leader. He's more of the I'm of a king versus president. That's his vision. Okay? Because if you don't abide by the vision of the people making the choice, then you're trying to say there's no way in the world I will ever give up my throne. That's his vision. He still doesn't get that vision of where he operates from, because that's the nature of what he was kind of brought up with. Okay? And it's not a disparaging of his soul. It's just the conditioning of his mind and why he can't get out of it. Right? He is weak. And in essence, humbleness is not his strength. Humility is not his strength. It's an aspect of who he is in certain areas of his life. But it's not put out on display. Let's put it that way. Now, in his mindset of ego, he's the bee's knees. So he still says he rocks the nation's capital. He expects there to be more demolition done in his honor. It serves that ego of his. How many people here are clapping at that vision? How many people here understand the destructive nature of that vision? We have put so much vision into one man's agenda that we can't imagine him stepping down from the throne in which he places himself. Whether or not the people have deemed him worthy of that post, right? See, for him, it's about the worth. It's a blow to the ego. It's a blow to the self-worth. And when we often get felt like we're lower than, then we tend to rise and we want to fight. Those of you who voted in this election of contest, because in essence it's like the contest, we say, stand down, place the armor on your chest, because it's your hearts that are getting hurt, not your minds, when you place your visions on destruction of Capitol building. Take heart in the vision of love and honor for the system of government that is not all that, right? It's part of it. It's not the only way to be in this planet. And we keep trying to force ourselves into this vision of love for all souls, even those that are trying to take us to a place of destruction. Let's not bow our heads and pray for a miracle. Let's look inside, open up our own hearts and minds, and figure out how we got here in the first place and why we feel like that's the place we still want to be. We have pressing issues to take on in the future, correct? We have 5 years left of pandemic with Trump, had he remained on the throne in which he placed himself. That's the vision that would have come true. And I'm tired of telling people the visions as they come true in the moment and having people who say, I will not honor that vision. It doesn't align with my own vision. You will start to understand the nature of those of us who have access to all versus your own ideas that get placed out in the visions of those who have no idea of what vibration, frequency, and creation is actually about. So a lot of people will assume only those of religion know how to get their ideas across. This is about people shifting the frequency of ideology into that of love. And that's the nature of it. My heart goes out to those souls who feel happy about destruction, but I can honor the vision of it. Once it gets to a higher level of understanding, you start to drop off. Okay, so now I want to thank you for this temporary reprieve from my other responsibilities. I have other responsibilities. So I want to take care of my own heart, my own soul, and do the work on the inside of why am I watching? Our hearts bleed for those who are hurt. We've already got at least one woman down. There will be more in the coming years of these souls that lose control of their hearts in that moment. The vibration of their souls is in weeping form in actuality, for they were not meant to be a part of one man's hidden agenda. It's not so hidden, people. We just need to open our hearts and let that love in and see where we reside. It's not about one party or the other. It's about how we hold ourselves in the vision of destruction. Do we honor our own hearts first and foremost? Absolutely. Do we let the people keep continuing down the path of destruction, or do we say, let's do away with that vision and let's hold ourselves to a higher level of understanding about what's going on and how we can make those changes that do indeed honor all of us versus some of us. Now, take care. Have a beautiful day. For those of you that don't want to watch the news, I would say, I honor your vision. I get it. I'm ready to let some of that go myself. Okay? But in essence, it's the nature of creating a beautiful place for not only my heart, but those of my children and all of us. That's why I honor the vision of in the moment, where are we? And how do we get there? To that place of love for all, where I don't create the destruction with them. We heal it. We see it as all, right? But remember to look at the world and see the beauty around you in the moment. Wherever you are, look at your families, your loved ones, the surroundings in your community, and try to find those visions of love that you hold so dear. That's where we can start to see the vision and say, how many people agree with those visions of destruction? My shadow warriors could come through with many visions of what that is, but that's not where we are. It's an aspect of who we are as a country. That's the nature of it. It's not who we are, just one aspect of who we are. So while we could always say that's just those people over there, that's no different than any other aspect of who we are. If we hold ourselves in the nature of destruction, we also can hold ourselves in the nature of love and healing. So let's honor that vision, take care of our own hearts, and have a wonderful day.